We happen to be today speaking about a famous rabbi that will make his mark, let's just say imprint, in Buenos Aires in Argentina. His name was Rabbi Yitzchak Chehebar. Zechet Tzadik Libracha. To give his title, Rabbi Yitzchak Moshe Shechibar. He was born in the year 1912, and I believe he passed away in 1990. I think it was the 27th of Av. So we're not doing this specific video at the time period of his Hilula, but he was a great rabbi in of itself. He was a rabbi, he was a posek, a rabbi that would render various different, let's just say, Jewish laws in of itself, and came from Arum Sofar, respectively. He would become the Sephardi rabbi in Buenos Aires in Argentina. He's a rabbi we've spoken about here on various occasions before. We're going to learn about how he become just to give a short synopsis before we go delve a bit more into his life. He was the rabbi of the congregation Israeliti Sephardi de la Argentina. I think it was called Yisod Hadat. That happened to have been a main communal organization of the Jewish people from Aleppo in Buenos Aires. Now, I think he was actually born in Halab, if I'm not mistaken, in Syria, and would actually live there till 1952, so he was 40 years of age. He would learn in a yeshiva there, a Talmud Torah, and would learn Torah or Talmud, let's just say, in the yeshiva over there, and garner a great amount of rabbinic law studies. Also, that's something that we very much have to point out. Over there, he would learn Arabic and French. I think it was in 1930. He was appointed a principal of a Talmud Torah in the city. He would be about 18 years of age at that point in time, and there were 700 students. He would put all his efforts in, let's say, the school in itself, but didn't really want the Alliance Israelite Universal to actually integrate inside the school system, because it was more of an unreligious institution at that point, or it was during those days, and he didn't want them to, like, say, make a merger inside the school itself, because it could affect the religion and stuff like that, the religious curriculum in itself. Now, I think it was at the end of 1947, in that period, the Arab population attacked the Jews of Aleppo, following the UN General Assembly decision on the partition of Palestine, Eretz Israel. While most of the Jewish leaders, I think, would flee from the city after these riots, Rabbi Chehebar undertook a prominent leadership, let's say, on the community itself, on the Kahal, we have to point out, and become its representative of the government. Jewish life will continue at that point in time, but security conditions became more precarious. He would have a grandiose role. He would encourage and help many Jewish people, including his parents and family, to emigrate to Israel. Now, friends, anyone tuning in live, we're exploring the history of a great Argentinian rabbi. Please subscribe to the channel, as we've got fantastic content over here on our community. We're a historic Jewish channel over here, exploring the whole world, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Now, I think it was in 1952, Rabbi Chehebar escaped to Lebanon with his wife and children. A year later, he arrived to Argentina, to Buenos Aires, and at that point in time, he'd be appointed the chief rabbi of the Aleppo Jewish community. Very prominent position. And he was very concerned about the observance of mitzvot by members of his Kehillat congregation, and worked to establish, let's say, a religious school for children and adults. I think it was in 1983 he received the Jerusalem Award for Jewish Education in the Diaspora from the World Zionist Organization and the Jewish Agency for Israel. So this was very interesting. I think Mr. D. Bargman will actually contribute this or help with in regards to Judeo encyclopedia within regards to this specific information we just said over. So let's speak a bit more within regards to him over here. A lot to actually say over. As I said before, he was born, I think, in Syria, in Halab, in Aleppo. The Hebrew year was Heitaf Reish Ein Bet. That naturally was 1912, we have to point out. I believe his father's name was Rav Moshe Shechibar. I believe also it was also a prominent rabbi, I think, of yesteryear. That's something we very much have to point out over here. Rav Moshe, I don't know much information within regards to him, but yeah, obviously this was a greatness in of itself. So let's explore a bit more within regards to him. So while he was young, I think Biyotot Sa'id Yamim Hityatem Imo. I think sadly his mother passed away while he was at a young age. I think there was a famine over there at that point in time. They worked long hours in order to help sustain the family. Achib Avram niftar biyaldato merav. I think sadly, his brother would pass away also possibly because of famine. בפתח אחת החצרות למרות הקשיים הרבים השקיע את כל זמנו הפנוי בלימוד תורה בהתמדה. So he would spend all his time, the extra time, literally delving in Torah as much as he can. Now it's actually interesting, he would learn in a famous yeshiva called Yeshivat Diglei Torah, and this would be under the famous Rabbi Moshe Tawil, or to give his full title, Rabbi Moshe Tawil Mali HaKohen. So who was Rav Moshe Tawil? Let's just speak about him for a minute. He actually, I think, lived between 1895 to 1976. So he was also a great rabbi of there. He was a rabbi, also a posek, a Rosh Yeshiva, and a head rabbi in the Chalabi community, and obviously the Rosh Yeshiva of Degel Torah. He himself was born in Syria, I believe, and came from this famous family, let's just say, and learned actually under various other great rabbis, including Rabbi Ezra Abadi Sha'im, if I'm not mistaken, and Rabbi Shaul Matlub Abadi, if I'm not mistaken. It was a good friend of his, and and I think he was quite close to another famous rabbi. I think another rabbi we've spoken about here on this series, Rav Salim Zafrani, he would actually very much work with. I do think it's going to be his Hilula quite soon, if I'm not mistaken. So that's something we very much have to point out. So maybe we should record a video with regards to Rav Salim over here. Hopefully, maybe at the time period of his Hilula, we will actually record a presentation with regards to him also. So that's something. And Rav Tawil was a great rabbi. He would let's just say be part of Beit Knesset in of itself. He eventually, I think in 1958, would actually make Aliyah to Eretz Israel, if I'm not mistaken. I had various great time with him, including obviously famous Rabbi Yitzchak Chehebar, who we were speaking about before, who was a chief rabbi of Argentina. Rabbi Yom Tov Yedid Halevi, another great rabbi. Rabbi Tzadka Harari, Rabbi Shachud Shrim, Rabbi Yaakov Atiyah, Rabbi Yosef Shashot Halevi, and Rabbi Moshe Assis. If I'm not mistaken, these are all Professor Moshe Assis, to give his full title. Another person I believe we did speak about over here in this series before, and someone that we very much want to speak about, hopefully in the future, maybe record a presentation within regards to that professor, and many memorials in Rav Moshe Tawil's memory. Okay, so what's interesting also is just going back to Rav Chehebar, not just Rav Moshe Tawil was his educator, also Rav Salim Zafrani. So let's speak about him just for a minute also, because we're on the topic. He himself lived between 1894 to 1965. He was also a rabbi, he was a posek, he was chazan, he was a Rosh Yeshiva, he was head of the Yeshiva Degel Torah, if I'm not mistaken. He, I believe, was actually born, I think, in 1894 on the 1st of Cheshvan, if I'm not mistaken. He was the son of Rav Avram Zafrani, if I'm not mistaken, working as a Beddin in the Beddin Gadol in Aram Sova. And he himself would learn under Rav Yeshaya Dayan, if I'm not mistaken, who was a famous rabbi, Rabbi Yitzchak Bochum Mizrahi, Rav Shlomo Tzapadia, Rav Yaakov Bar Shaul Dweck, another great rabbi, and Rav Moshe Mizrahi, who was another great rabbi over there at that point in time. And was other rabbis, Rav Ezra Abadi Shain, who we just spoke about before, Rav Yehuda Atzlan Atiyah, Rav Yitzchak Chehebar, Rav Eliyahu Lopez, who was a famous rabbi who would eventually, I think, become a great rabbi and of Porat Yosef, Rav Meir Dayan, Rabbi Shaul Matlub Abadi Gam also. So it happened to be that we were all from the same league of rabbis in of itself. And it's actually interesting. I think his grandson is famous Rav Shlomo Yedidia Zafrani, if I'm not mistaken, the president of the Igud Amalei Torah, if I'm not mistaken, and the Rosh Bedin of Keter Torah, if I'm not mistaken. He also had great Talmudim, including Rabbi Yitzchak Chehebar, if I'm not mistaken. Also, it's actually interesting. Rav Zafrani would actually go to Eretz Israel and stay in Tel Aviv and become a prominent rabbi over there. And I think his son, Rabbi Yitzchak Zafrani, would actually learn in the famous yeshiva Porat Yosef. Also, that's very interesting to point out. Hopefully, we'll record a video with regards to Rav Salim at the time period of his Hilul. But we're speaking about Rabbi Yitzchak Chehebar over here friends, in today. So, בהמשך ירד ממנו all פרנסתו אחיו ואמו, והוא עסק בתורה משך 18 שעות ביממה. Reported over he'd spent 18 hours a day learning Torah. עד שיהיו רבותיו מפצירים בו מעט לעת שיצא מספר דקות אל החצר לשאוב אבי יצחק ולנוח מעט. So he would spend literally the whole of his day studying and toiling inside Torah. And really much 18 hours a day is absolutely phenomenal. Just to point over, and a phenomenal achievement in of itself. And just can see the huge amounts of Torah that actually do flourish, and how important it is just when we speak about these greats. So the Kimov yesterday, how they were able to delve in Torah the whole time. You know, it just gives all of us a huge Musa lesson that Torah study is there. It's a present from Hashem, and he really spent every extra minute, every extra moment studying Torah. How much more that we very much should be doing, try to emulate that in of itself. Now we're going to come back in a minute. We're going to take a very short break, so just watch your space, and we'll be back in a minute, friends. So please, in the meantime, don't go anywhere, as we'll explore more within regards to the famous rabbis over here. So just watch your space, friends. Okay, thanks everyone for being patient over here. We're exploring a few of the highlights of Rabbi Yitzchak Chehebar, who was a famous chief rabbi of Argentina of his day. Okay, so very interesting. So he would learn under these great guys, and would spend pretty much 18 hours a day at one stage learning Torah. Now, Harab Moshe Tawil, הרבה לשבחו ביוצאו בו 18 בלבד, הפקיד בידיו את ניהול תלמוד תורה הגדול של חלב. בו למדו אז כ-700 ילדים, מפיהם של כ-40 מלמדים. מסרה זו סייע לו מאוד בפרנסתו ופרנסתו ביתו. Very interesting. Rabbi Moshe Tawil, I believe, who we just spoke about just beforehand, would speak about him within regards to the highest, let's just say, and praise him greatly, even when he was just 18 years of age, and would entrust him in the management of this great Talmudic institution in Aleppo. 700 students there would be at that point in time, and this would be a position where I think there were as many as 40 rabbis teaching, and really, really excel basically his stature in himself. Now I think Kamod Yehi Tafshin Hey, it was Shalach Michtab El Rabbi Yitzchak Herzog. So they would send a letter to Rabbi Herzog, who I think was a chief rabbi of the Ashkenazi community of Eretz Yisrael in 1936 until he passed away. Bohu Kubal Al Kach Shrashi הציונית מעלים ילדים ממערם צובא ומקומות אחרים אל ארץ הקודש, ושם הם ממרים את דעתם ועוקרים מהם את הדת והמצוות. So very interesting enough. So just to point that out, he would send a letter, I think at that point in time there were people let's just say, I think that they were concerned at that stage that maybe some people, students from that community, might have went to the Holy Land, and let's just say religious and commandments might have been a challenge over there at that point in time to keep the Torah and mitzvot as much as probably they could have done. So that was a concern over there. So for 6 months I think he would fall and be quite ill. So I think there was a worry for his health condition. So I think Rav Shrum would actually take over at that point in time to steady the ship over there, and I think for that window of time when he wasn't feeling well. And now they say בהמשך התרפא ושב לאיתנו והרב תמיד מינה אותו לאחראי על קשר הקהילה היהודית מול הממשל הסורי, ובמסגרת מינוי זה פעל רבות לפי אותו הקהילה לחיזוק מעמדה. אחר פרעות חלב סייע ליהודים רבים בחלב להבריח את משפחותיהם מחוץ לסוריה, וכאשר נודע הדבר לסולטנות שהוא ברח גם הוא ללבנון. And so very interesting. So I think at that point in time he would recover, thank God, return to his home, and he would be responsible again for relations with, I think, the Syrian government, if I'm not mistaken, in a framework. He would have to help Jews, let's just say, moving, let's just say at that point in time, obviously there was dangers. I think they would be traveling through Lebanon, if I'm not mistaken, to make their next destination happen. Now, what's interesting is, where would they end up going to? They would end up going to Argentina. So we've spoken about Argentina here on various occasions. For Kavat Kwa Katsara, Lebanon. So they spent a window of time in Lebanon. Nikra al Yedei Hakila Yudit by Argentina. Lavo B'Shemesh Karabam V'Kamore Dalkam. So he would go on over there to Argentina and become an over there, teaching, and very much part a head premium position over there. I think it was in the year Heitav Shin Yudalid 1953. Harav Schiber in Mishpachtom Lebanon. They would get to Lebanon. Hishtaka B'Bowunis Eretz v'Yisad et Kehillat Yisodei Hadat. So they'll actually form a congregation called the Yisodei Hadat. Hakiemet Atayom, I think, which is actually standing today. B'Nosaf Hakim et Yeshivat Beit David Yeshiva V'Amad Roshah B'Tchilat Shivto. בארגנטינה סבר שיש לבטל את החרם נגד גיורים במדינה. אותו תקנו הרב סטון והרב גולדמן, these two great rabbis he's spoken about, רב סטון beforehand, בשל שעת אחת גדולה ומתוך רצון למנוע התבולט. אולם ברבות השנים אימץ את גישה המחמרים ונלחם בגיורים. שענו, this was stated over here from Wikipedia, I'm just reading up, שענו עדים בדבר שלא ישמרו כלל בכל מה שעושים ומתגרים רק אחיזת עיניים. אותם ערכו רבנים חרדים ומומחים, כאשר הכוונה לרב דוד כהנא, רבה של ארגנטינה, באותו העת, אותו כינה דוקטור כהנא. הרב שחיבר פנה לרבנים רבים, בבקשה שיפרסמו את דעתם, המתנגדת לגיורים אלה. חלקם הסכימו איתו ונתערו לבקשתו, ויש הפציר בו שלא נמנע מלגייר, אלא ינסח לשפר את תהליך ההכנה לגיור, כך שגיור יהיה לשם שמיים במידה שהיא. It's a very, very interesting enough. So just, I think there were different enactments that would actually take place at that point in time. Something to point out, and which was established from Ras Sutton and Rav Goldman. Something that this topic onto itself. And we'll speak about that in the coming minutes. I think Rav David Kahana, or Rav Dr. David Kahana, was a Zionistic leader and from the Mizrahi movement, if I'm not mistaken. I think he was Polish also, if I'm not mistaken. So someone that we should speak about. So let's continue over here. What it's saying over here, they say לימים כאשר הגיעו תלונות לרבו הרב משה טוויל על תקיפתו של תלמידו בענייני הדת, אמר כי שמח לשמוע שתלמידיו אין אהוב, משום שרב שאהוב על כולם סימן שאינו עושה את תפקידו הכראוי. And this is just reading over from Wikipedia over here. I think they will visit Israel, Pagash, and would actually meet the famous Rabbi Masoud ben Shimon, who was, I think, the Sephardi Rabbi of Bnei-Brak, if I'm not mistaken, and take on various different prominent positions over there. That's something that we very much just point out. I think maybe the Rosh Yeshiva or Elitzur, if I'm not mistaken, and in the Ramat Elchanan neighborhood in Bnei Brak, a place we visited here. B'shichato imo amar ki modal kolelei havrechim ki yom eno mutzlach bio וכי במקום להביא אברכים שכבר גדלו בתורה לתוך הכולל. טוב יותר לקחת ילדים שטרם גדלו בחוכמה, לגדלם ולשלם להם משכורת קטנה, ואת יתרתה לשמור להם בצד. והוסיף כי אם יהיה מי שיעשה זאת, הוא יירתם לסייע לו. That's what's actually said over here. I think he passed away, Rav Chehebar did, on a Shabbat, I think it was, on the 27th of Av, in the year 1990, on the 18th of August, it would have been on that year. So that's very, very interesting. And there's actually a lot said about him online, if I'm not mistaken, because within regards to I think these takanot especially, they would very much mention him in great detail, I think, in various news articles. That's something that we have to point out over there. So it's quite a well-documented thing. I think actually there's a whole item. I think we've got actually the article over here. There was, I think quite recently here in January, there was a decades-old decree, let's say, barring Jewish conversions conducted inside the country, including, let's just say, in Argentina, among the Syrian community, and would receive, let's say, from non-Orthodox Jewish people would not be so happy about it. The document was signed, and it was Rabbi Yitzchak Chehebar, let's say, restated the rabbinic ban, which was first enacted, I think it was in the year 1927, that recognized conversions only if finalized in Israel, apparently. And this was a restriction as permanent and binding, citing concerns of Jewish lineage and community integrity. So this was, let's just say, one of the enactments that was made at that stage in time. So very, very interesting. We're speaking here about Rabbi Yitzchak Chehebar. So he had two outstanding students. One of them happened to be someone named Rabbi Yitzchak and Tebi Saka, if I'm not mistaken. Let's speak about him for a minute. We did speak about him before. He was born in 1964 and chief rabbi of, once again, of the Sephardi community in Bobounis, Aires, and I think he's founder and the president of Irgun Menorah Yehudi, if I'm not mistaken. We can actually say a few words. Rabbi Yitzchak Saka, I believe is his name, a famous rabbi. He was born actually in Bobounis, Aires, to once again another family that was from Aleppo and Eastern Europe. I think he studied at the famous Yisod Hadat, which we just spoke about, which very much connects to Rabbi Yitzchak Chehebar, the chief rabbi of Argentina. Between 1981 to 1984, he studied at the Porat Yosef Yeshiva in the Old City in Jerusalem. From 1985 to 1989, he studied the Chavei Dat Beit Midrash, with one of the first groups, I think, that was ever directed by Rabbi Yosef, if I'm not mistaken. And he get from Chacham Ovadia Yosef a rabbinic ordination, and is considered one of Rabbi Ovadia Yosef's closest, let's just say, students, we have to point out over there. And now I think it was between 1989 to 1997, he would lead the youth department at Yesod Hadat. He would teach at the Bet David Yeshiva, if I'm not mistaken, with the same community. He founded the Menorah organization in 1996 to help spread religious values among Argentinian Jewish youth, and has been the Sephardic chief rabbi of Bobounis Aires since 1997. In 2019, quite recently, he promoted a joint university program with the University of Palermo in Bobounis Aires. Let's just say it was centered more Orthodox Jews, especially unique in Latin America, we have to point out over here. And I think Menorah Up, it's called. Since then, I think more than 140 Jewish students studied on this program, and let's say on at least 4 different careers in of itself. Interfaith work. He often meets and discusses different topics, multiple religious and political leaders. Among them, I think even Pope Francis, for example, with whom he has met many times since the period. The Pope was, I think, the Archbishop of Bobounis Aires. Now, we're going to explore his published works in minute, friends. We're just going to just taking a short 1-minute break, and we're going to come back and talk about his various published works. So just watch your space over here. We'll be back in a minute, friends. Hi, Shalom, everyone. Thanks for being patient in regards to the break over here as we're exploring the history of famous chief rabbi that will be a chief rabbi in Argentina of his day, a rabbi that we've spoken about, I believe, on various occasions before, also in the series. I have to very much point out over here. So thanks, everyone, for being patient over here as we explore the great rabbi. And anyone, if you're new over here to our community, welcome. If this is the first time that you are here, welcome to our community. Please don't forget to also join the community. You can do that by subscribing. We've got fantastic content over here for all you fantastic people to actually learn and educate and get inspired. So that's something I very much will have to recommend over here for everyone to actually see itself. So we happen to be speaking about Rav Chehebar, very, very great rabbi of his time, a rabbi that I think there's famous Midrash Sephard, I think that's based in Jerusalem, a rabbinic program. It might be named after someone in his family. I have to double check that over here. That's something important to actually learn about, let's just say, in of its own right. But yeah, very, very interesting. So it's just education-wise and learning about the good Sephardic Jewish rabbinic history. I think there's nothing like it in of itself. And that's one thing that we're doing on this channel. We've already recorded, friends, about 1,450 great rabbis of yesteryear from various different countries, from North Africa, from Spanish countries, from Ottoman places, and something that we're very, very much proud about over here and celebrate, and really very much recommend everyone to actually learn more. Now, also, once again, if you happen to descend from any of the great rabbis we are speaking about, please let me know. We would love to hear more information over here within regards to that. Now, we're speaking about some Talmidim at the moment of Rav Chehebar. That's something that we very much have to point about. And we are speaking about Rav Saka for a minute within regards to great works, because he happens to be the chief rabbi of Argentina currently. And remember, Rav Chehebar was a chief rabbi in his day of Argentina. So you can see how Rav Saka will actually continue this very important mantelpiece and prominent position of Argentinian, and especially Buenos Aires. I think Buenos Aires had one of the largest Jewish communities in Argentina, and I recommend everyone out there. We did record a video with regards to the history of Argentinian Jewish community in of itself. So I think it's very, very important that everyone actually watch over and do some chazara. That's always going to be welcome within regards to that. So let's go back now and speak about Rav Saka, continue speaking about him for a minute. He wrote different books. I think that Otsorot Chachmei Aram Tzova Al Harambam, if I'm not mistaken. That was a book compiled by Rav Yitzchak Saka, which was interpretation of commentaries in Rambam's Mishnah Torah, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was published in 1989, and there was a Michtabe Halacha Yitzchak Iranen, if I'm not mistaken. Various halachic writings, answers by Rabbi Yitzchak Chehebar. Very much he would continue the legacy of Rav Chehebar, who was chief rabbi of the Jews of Aleppo in Buenos Aires. This was, I think, published in 1992, and you saw that respectively. Then I think more recently, there'll be a book called Kasher, Komida Sana Para El Kuaba YL Espirito, published in Buenos Aires in Argentina in 2024, and Enema Rados, this was published in 2025, very recently. And he would translate books, the Chazon Ovadia, Pesach Laws, and the Haggadah, which was originally written by Chacham Ovadia Yosef. It was published in Midrash Sephardi in 1989. And the Torah Talmud Moadim, this is halachic resolutions on the Jewish festivities, written by Rav David Yosef. I think this was published by Yechevei Dat Beit Midrash in 1990. So very, very interesting. So we're speaking about Rav Chehebar over here in this special edition over here. So very, very interesting. And yeah, and that's something we have to point out. So he wrote, okay, so let's go back to Rabbi Yitzchak Chehebar. He himself wrote books, including Sefer Yitzchak Iranen, which was, we mentioned about before, Sefer Ro'en Ne'eman, which was in 2 divisions. This was in Code of Jewish Law, Orach Chaim, Yorei Deah, and the Seder HaSlichot, if I'm not mistaken. This was according to the minhagim, the customs of the Aram Tzova community. And the Yehurim et Chacham Yitzchak Moshe Shchiver. which will be printed also, we have to point out. I think there's under his name a Kollel Avraham called the Or Yitzchak in the Ramat Shlomo neighborhood. There's actually named after him, and Ramat Shlomo is not a stranger to this place. It's up to our channel because we did record a video, if I'm not mistaken, that was in Ramat Shlomo, where we did a tour with in regards to that very much. I would like to see that next time. We have to make sure that we are able to see it, and so on and so forth. And yeah, very, very important. So yeah, he was a Talmid of the famous Rabbi Moshe Tawil. He was a great rabbi. He was a head of a Talmud Torah at 18 years of age, and had a brilliant organization skills in the education system in of itself, seminars, and many of his Talmidim become great leaders today, especially in Mexico City and San Paulo, and various different shechita houses, I think, were established in Buenos Aires because of him. There was great chains and factories, especially sausage factories, for example. He received the Jerusalem Prize. He was outstanding in Jewish education in diaspora, and yeah, many things. So he passed away in 1990. So he was a famous rabbi of his time. Rabbi Chehebar was, and someone that we've spoken about here on various occasions before. Over here, we have to point out over here, friends. So everyone over here, we are a community here, and we love exploring their history with regards to great rabbis of yesteryear. Now, friends, if you descend from any of the great Chachamim that we are speaking about, please don't hesitate. Let me know. We really appreciate it. We want to learn about it and celebrate the great Chachamim of yesteryear. We're so lucky to have so many great Sephardi great Chachamim that actually embraced all the different parts of the world, and very much Rabbi Yitzchak Chehebar also, who was a very much a great rabbi of his time, and someone that we've spoken about on various occasions before here inside this series, and the care and the thought he had as a great rabbi, that's something that very much has to be celebrated at the highest degree, we have to point out over here. Now, we're a community here. We don't just record videos on great rabbis of yesteryear, we're also doing tours all over Israel. We've toured over many places already. It's something that we have to point out. We like to tour. It's in our opinion it was, and yeah, we travel over Israel. We like to explore Israel. That's something else that we have to point out, and we've been already to many places, let's just say, in itself, all over Israel, especially in Jerusalem. So we've been all over Israel, especially to Yerushalayim, and yeah, it's just very interesting. He was a rabbi in Argentina. Remember, we've spoken about many of the great rabbis that actually came from Argentina of yesteryear. I think we spoke about maybe at least maybe as many as 10 or 15 rabbis that actually came from there. So that's very interesting. So he would very much have an integral part over there, we have to point out. It wasn't necessarily that he came from there, but it was a very integral part over there inside that specific yeshiva in itself. So friends, everyone, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, join our community. I think on that note, it's quite late. We'll wish you all a good night. Thanks for spending the time to watch this presentation.